Good deal. So Pam, you all set?
I am.
All right, we'll get this underway. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, July 11th edition of the Basalt Town Council meeting. And so we will begin with the call to order and the roll call. Pam, please.
Absolutely. Let us give Ryan a slack a minute to get here. Let's start with Dieter Schindler,
Present.
Glenn Drummond,
Here.
David Knight,
Here.
Elise Hoddle,
Present.
Ryan Slack,
I think he's on his way.
Bill Kane,
Here.
Angela Anderson.
She's calling in virtually.
Thanks, Angela. All right, sir.
All right,
Most of the
thank you very
18 is
much.
here.
So, first order of business is our consent agenda. There are two items. The minutes from June 27th, 23, and a post reappointment to reappoint Parks, Open Space, and Trails member Amy Beasley to a 3-year term to end July 11th, 2026. So they're the two consent items. If council would like to discuss any of those, we're able to take them off. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda as items as presented.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Oh, good, and Jeff didn't give me like the... I was staring you down.
Yeah. Got the nod.
Good. So the next item is our call to the public. Let me just remind those that may be watching on TV that our suggested method for dialing into the meeting virtually is to go online for www.basalt.net, Agendas and Minutes tab, then click on July 11, 2023, meeting packet to open it. On the meeting access instructions page, click on the link to join the webinar, and then our town clerk, Pam Schilling, will admit you, and then you can address council. So easy as that. So it doesn't look like we have anyone dialed in, but we'll keep our ears tuned. So while we're waiting for those, we'll take comments from members of the public that would like to address council on items not scheduled later. Mr. Guy?
I promise this will end soon. Ted Guy, 167 Swinging Bridge Lane. I'm a little concerned on the bidding that you guys selected the high bidder, spending another $1,450,000. When we voted for the $18 million in bonding, it was for streetscape, affordable housing, and environmental friendly projects. It now seems that we're spending it all on Midland Avenue. You're at 13 million, you had another 3 million in phase one. I don't know what phase three costs, but as I think I said a couple of weeks ago, I really think you guys need to stop and rethink this whole thing. You're $5,650,000 over your budget, and there is no way you are going to value engineering that into a viable project. You really need to rethink. I gave some suggestions. Michelle and I have met. I'd like to be part of the solution and not the problem, but you guys got your work cut out for you. And I do think that you ought to wait on the water line till next spring when you know what you're doing, because you don't know right now what's going in other than the water line. I think also that the town needs to sort of rethink both their outreach and their communication methods. The park bandstand, I think, is a prime example. Most people refer to it as a pimple. They don't see the connection with the old coke ovens. Coke ovens were made out of stone and brick. This is made out of plastic and steel pipes. And for some reason, when you guys decide to do something, it's almost like you should take out a full-page ad somewhere and send out emails to everybody so that we know about it. It's way too late when it's going up. And there's a lot of people that really don't like that and really think it's inappropriate. One of the other things is that you constantly hear that you're on budget and on time with the streetscape. Reality is you're over budget and you're late. And the guys that keep telling you that ought to be thrown out of the room because they're lying to you. Last thing is, Basalt has always wanted to maintain its small town character. We're historic and we're Western. And what we're getting now, and not all of it with you guys sitting here at the table, some of it goes back to previous, we're getting urban, glitzy, and yuck. That's my word for what we're seeing. Free Range was a good building. The Basalt River Park buildings, I think, are bad. Too much metal. They look like basically industrial park on steroids. They also don't have enough parking. The code was changed under Jackie to minimize parking. It ain't working. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. I would just like to clarify a few things because they hang. So I think we're almost completed with, we had three, as you mentioned, there are three priorities for our capital budget. Our photovoltaic project is in fact on budget and on time, and we do have installations through town. So when you say we're only spending on one project, we're pretty close to being finished with the solar arrays, which will add significantly to our inventory of renewable energy. We have purchased 4 lots. We do have monies earmarked that are not going to be diverted into the Main Street project for affordable housing. So I can assure you all 3 of those priorities will be addressed in proportion to how they were represented to the public. So stay tuned on that one. As to the plastic rocks, I'm not sure what the material is. Maybe it is fiberglass. But I think what many fail to recognize is that there was never an interest in creating some kind of gorgeous organic, sort of representation of the sort of underlying bedrock geology of the basalt area. It's playground equipment. So look around the valley and take a look at playground equipment. There are code constraints. There are, that are really hard to achieve with natural rock. But the point of it is, this is a thing for kids, for really little kids, to get introduced to climbing. It's going to be very popular. We're sorry if people don't like playground equipment. It's what it is. City of Aspen has some what is called cultured stone or artificial rock in Wagner Park. It's been there forever. Kids are all over that thing. They love it. And there's never been a whisper of criticism of the City of Aspen for having, and they have got a pretty good source for rock material as well up there. So, I take a little umbrage at that. I want to defend our staff. I think, this was an artistic endeavor. I think it's going to be popular for kids. I got to agree with you, and that wouldn't be my pick for, being a material I would choose to, if we were really intent on trying to artistically represent the natural environment of our valley. It would be a horrible failure, but that's not what it is. So we encourage your patience on that.
Well, and again, I think it just goes back to the communication. I mean, it stunned everybody. Nobody knew it was coming.
Can I just speak to that real quick? Because
Yeah.
I've sat on this council now for almost 6 years. And Ted, if you look to the right, that was a picture that was presented to us over a year ago of what we were gonna have here. And I understand not everyone has time to be here, but this is all in our public notices. This is all on the website. It is put out the week before every meeting. And yes, I understand, not everyone has time to be here. This isn't, everyone's always late to the game through all this planning process. And maybe people just need to understand this is how town government works. We didn't develop this in a back closet. This was presented to us many times over. We discussed it immensely, from a fountain to the water feature to the band shell so it's hard that if you have been in every one of these meetings and you come up and tell us that it hasn't been presented, because it has. We can go back, and I'll find it for you and send you an email.
But again, as you said, you guys are in here every other week. The vast majority of the citizens read the newspaper. They don't come here, they don't see it. And all I'm saying is that you need to improve your outreach to all those people who don't come. That's all. Because I know, I've sat at boards like this, so.
So listen, you know, we've, you know, heard a lot, we've sparred a lot, and, you know, your comments have not gone to, on deaf ears. I mean, I think,
I realize that.
what's that?
I said I realize that.
Yeah, so, you know, I think that our willingness to go back and rebid the project to see if we could avoid building in summer, it, you know, frankly, costing us a significant delay, and the result is undoubtedly going to be that construction impact during the summer will be significantly reduced. So I think you won that point by, you know, by maybe sort of an unorthodox route, but anyway, that's where we've ended
No, and
up.
I do appreciate it, and I think I thanked you at one other point for doing that. And,
Yeah.
but I do know from all my 50 years of architecture and whatnot, it is impossible to get $5.5 million.
No, I think we're all
I know you
well
are.
aware of that.
That's why I'm trying to meet with Michelle and be part of the solution, so, thank you.
Okay. All right, so any others that would like to address council? Get severely rebuffed? No. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the call to the public. So, mayor and council reports, comments?
I just want to make one comment about the rocks, just because we've been talking about, everybody should put their hands on the rocks, because I've seen people say they're foam. They are not foam. It feels like stone. It's like any other climbing, like the Wagner Park or any other synthetic rock climbing structure. Like, actually go touch the rocks. Like, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. The kids will like it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're set up perfectly for kids.
Underneath.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a little embarrassing when I rope up to try to do that first pitch.
You're doing that tomorrow at the concert.
Yeah, I heard that was part of the ribbon cutting ceremony.
We could add it. What a great addition. I'm sure the fans would love that. Okay, so, anyone else? I just want to make sure everybody is reminded that we have our ribbon cutting and our first big concert in the park tomorrow night. 2 really good bands. And I think it's going to be rock and roll out there. You know, I think we're going to have a pretty good turnout. So hopefully, councilors, you can make it. It's really a strenuous assignment. It's like drinking and listening to music on the lawn. So this isn't too bad a task. There is drinking on the lawn, isn't there, Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a permit boundary.
Who is the nonprofit sponsor of this?
BEF.
Basalt Education Foundation,
Oh, great.
supporting the kids.
Thanks.
Okay, any comments, questions, opinions? Great. So, manager's report?
Yeah, a couple quick things here. So I added a letter into the packet, and this was a request for electeds to sign on to the lending their support for the Advanced Clean Cars 2 rules. That is a statewide rule, and so if you all were interested in that, the memo basically outlines sort of what the thoughts are with regard to how this is a benefit to the state and the people in the state. I'll just name a few of those for the record here. They talk about the climate benefits and economic benefits, specifically around ownership of electric cars and saving on fuel and things along those lines, protecting public health, and then they make the point about environmental justice, as many of the vehicles driven heavily in parts of the state are in, as it relates to vehicles that are associated with commerce and such, often are around areas where poor people are affected by the pollution and such. So it would have that aspect to it as well. And then talks a little bit about just expanding consumer choice. And then we could kind of set the stage as an example for the nation and for other states to follow suit and really get the electric car industry bolstered up. So if you all agree, you can just kind of do it with a nod, and I could respond to them tomorrow and let them know.
I got it with the
Everybody
Google
feel
form already.
supportive?
Yeah.
Great.
Add, just
yeah,
for the record,
please.
it's specific to light duty class, and maybe people don't know what that is, so I just looked it up to make sure I was understanding. So pickup trucks, sport utility vehicles, which is SUVs, the majority of what's driven in our valley, vans and minivans, so that folks understand what it is that we're advocating for.
Yeah, and I think they make that clarification so that it's not as if sort of the commercial industry would be kind of scrambling and having to change out their cars and things like that aren't readily available on the market today. So thanks for that. Two more quick things. Of course, I know you've mentioned about tomorrow evening. We are going to have a little ribbon cutting ceremony in between Mama Lingua, who's the first band, and the second band, Dragon Deer. So at 6:30, Mayor Kane was going to get up and say a few words. But if any of you would be interested in jumping up on the stage and helping to hold the ribbon, we'll be doing that like 6:30, 6:35, somewhere around there. And if not, we certainly hope to see you out in the crowd. I think it's going to be a fun night. And then just one other quick mention. We are doing the community recycling event again at the high school this year. So that's coming on the 29th of July. So this will be our third year, and we do that with the help of Eagle County. So they do a lot of support in that. And so a couple of the things in there. So electronic waste. So that's TVs and computers and things along those lines. Household hazardous waste, if you're getting rid of chemicals and paints and things along those lines. Tires, metal, and then compost and yard waste, and then they have a paper shredding service. So that's on July 29th from 9 to 1 at the high school. And we'll be putting that out on our social media, and it was in the green team news, and we'll probably have really good attendance again.
Yeah, that's a popular event. So thanks for that. All right. We got a pretty brief agenda tonight. So presentations, the first item is the CC4CA update. So Sarah, come on up and tell us what's going on. CC4CA is Colorado Communities for Climate Action, just in case nobody's got the acronym.
Yeah, it's what I stumble over all the time. I figure I'm loud enough without it, but thank you. So CC4CA, the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, is a statewide coalition of local governments that advocate for issues related to climate policy at the state level, with aspirations and kind of set up to also do this at the federal level if that presents itself in the future. CC4CA was formed in 2016, and we can be proud that the town of Basalt was an early member, joining in 2017. So in the 7 years that this organization has been active, membership has grown to 42 communities across Colorado, and it's really become a powerful voice for climate policy within our state. So the coalition's efforts are guided by a policy statement. This is comprised of general policy principles as well as policy positions. And it's created by and unanimously adopted by all of the member communities. The policy statement was initially revisited each year. This was something we did every year at the annual retreat. And this changed in 2020 when the decision, I think it was about 2020, when there was a decision to consider amending and revisiting the policy statement every 2 years. So this year was just a little bit different than normal. This was a year where we revisited the policy statement, and generally amendments to that document are discussed and debated and considered, and ultimately drafted at the annual retreat. I know, Elise, you've probably been involved in some of those early ones, and we know that that was a lot of work to get to that end. So amendments to the recent update, and these amendments are born out of the policy committee. It's a subcommittee within the organization. And they were presented for review by the member communities prior to our annual June retreat. And this process involves CC4CA staff checking in and meeting with each of the member communities that had questions or concerns, or maybe wanted to propose some language or amend some language prior to the retreat. So because of this pre-work, the retreat wasn't the, forgive me, but the slog fest that usually has been in the past years of moving through those proposed amendments and wordsmithing, and everyone's always very respectful and kind with each other, but it's, you get some tensions here and there. And so while we still did spend some significant time on the discussion around the policy statement, it did open up time for small breakout discussion groups and time spent getting to know other members within the organization. David Knight was there at the retreat with me this year as well, representing Basalt, and I think we can say we had a pretty good experience with that. So ultimately, the policy statement was adopted in its final form at the annual retreat, so it doesn't come back to council for ratification this year as it has in past years where we've put it on the consent agenda. That copy of the final policy statement was included within council's packet. And then this latest policy statement does remain in effect for 2 years, so it'll go through the end of June of 2025. And just of note, there wasn't a lot of substantive changes that were made, and this is pretty typical. There's usually, more wordsmithing, more questioning things, and we've added in things in the past, but there's never been like a whole blow up of the document and recrafting. The latest policy statement, it does open up language that could have otherwise felt too confining for the organization to be able to make to support or oppose a bill. It prioritized equity in decision-making. It encourages policies that enable local control around land use, zoning, and planning to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It clarifies CC4CA's position around existing and future fossil fuel generation, and enhances the policy positions around the topic of resiliency. And I think overall, really, Basalt should be proud of its support in this coalition. In this past legislative session, CC4CA took an actual a position on 44 bills, 41 which were successful and 3 which were partially successful. And then there were a number of other bills that CC4CA was monitoring throughout the legislative session. The executive director, Jacob Smith, recently reminded me that CC4CA takes its positions on bills based on the strength of their total policies and the depth of what they can accomplish to these bills. And the metrics are not important, but still you can't really argue with roughly a 96% success rate. I think that's really something to be celebrated. CC4CA staff looks to its member communities to provide statements and testimonies, letters to the editor, or to sign on to letters in support of items that fall within the policy statement, and that was what Ryan had presented earlier, that letter of support for the Advance for Clean Cars. So you'll probably see more of these things coming your way, particularly ramping up during the legislative session. So, in conclusion, I just want to reinforce that membership within this organization, this coalition, is moving Basalt further in achieving its climate action goals. It is in alignment with the goals of our strategic plan for this year, and it's also aligned with the goals found in the 2020 master plan. I was also going to put in a plug for the community recycling event, so thank you for covering that. And I'm happy to, if you have any questions about the organization or anything you'd like me to unearth, let me know.
Great. Questions? So are we sort of staying in touch with Eagle County? I mean, they've been pretty sort of active in the initiatives. So are we staying in touch with them? Do we coordinate with them through CC4CA a lot?
Well, we do, in the sense that at the retreat, our County Commissioner Matt Scher was at the retreat representing Eagle County, and they are a part of CC4CA, as well as the Climate Action Collaborative for Eagle County Communities. And so they're not in opposition in any way with each other. And there are things that probably can be supported by each of these, organizations, coalition, but it's kind of separate work. We're working more on a like state policy level with CC4CA, whereas the Climate Action Collaborative, and Elise could even speak more to this than I can, is really focused on what is our, as a Eagle County community, doing to achieve our greenhouse gas reduction goals.
So I felt like we were taking a bold step with our building code amendments, and particularly with respect to 25% on-site renewables. And how do we sort of stack up relative to other partners and jurisdictions? Are we in sort of the lead dog or the kind of role here, or or is everybody kind of signed on to those kind of
That's a great question. I can't really speak to if everybody's at that 25% mark. I haven't gotten down to that level of detail within different codes. I do know that Eagle County had a subcommittee, a code cohort, that they were getting the Eagle County communities to sign on to, to our 2021 IECC, to, Lisa, I don't know if you want to offer any additional information on that, because I wasn't really involved in that particular part of it, but they have been really working to get everyone in Eagle County on the same page, as well as working, with our partner communities, like Pickens County, so that we're all kind of looking at the same type of codes. The granular detail I don't have.
One of the benefits of having all the communities on the same codes is that a developer has no enticement to go into a different community.
Jurisdiction shopping.
Yes, exactly, jurisdiction shopping. So that's one of the things.
Outside of our town boundaries, something like that.
That's one of the things that the Climate Action Collaborative works on. So the CC4CA works in the policy space, whereas the Climate Action Collaborative works, basically the Climate Action Plan that we ratified in 2017 is going through a process of update right now because we're not reaching our goals, to answer your question.
Yeah.
And it's not us specifically Basalt, it's just in general, we're not getting there. And so we're looking at, how to ramp up the strategies. And also the state has now increased their greenhouse gas goals, and they're more aggressive than ours are. Ours were more aggressive first, and then they changed theirs. So we're looking at updating those goals as well. But we don't want to make any false claims and say like, oh, well, we're going to be, 100% net zero by 2025, unrealistically. So we're trying to match the work plan to the goals.
That's a great overview. Thank you.
Well, good. Thanks for the update. Anyone else? Gone. Thanks, Sarah.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sarah.
Okay, council actions. Item 7A, 6:30. Look at that. That thing is splitting the 6 at 6:30. Resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving an agreement for professional services and with Economic and Planning Systems, EPS, for housing needs assessment and legal nexus for short-term rental impact fee. James.
Yeah, thank you. This is a resolution, as the mayor indicated, that would authorize professional.
Mic over. Your mic.
Oh, he's got
This
two.
one's not.
Okay. Oh, I thought you.
It's this one I'm using. So it is a resolution that would authorize a professional services agreement with Economic and Planning Systems Incorporated, also known as EPS, and they're from Denver. And it's to conduct a updated housing needs assessment for Basalt and to do a study and legal nexus that would be necessary for Basalt to consider the potential for a short-term rental impact fee. Both of these items were slated on the town's work program for this year, as well as budgeted. And staff put out an RFP in March and received 2 proposals. One of the proposals only covered the short-term rental piece and was not complete. And then the second proposal was from EPS, and it was complete and thorough. but their original proposal was over the 90,000 that we had budgeted for these studies. So the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, BAC, recommended that town staff go back and work with EPS to adjust the scope and try to get within the $90,000 budget that we had for these studies this year. So staff did that. We went back and worked with EPS to adjust the scope a bit. And what we really did was adjust the surveying techniques that we had in the scope to survey tenants of the affordable housing. We adjusted it from a kind of paper hard copy survey, which tends to get a little more response, to an email survey that town staff has to do a little more work, but that cut some of the costs out of the proposal. As well as we reduced some of the overlap that was in the original proposal with the Western Mountain Regional Housing Coalition study that's ongoing at the current time as well. So we're going to get some data from that aspect of it that they can use in the Basalt survey and study as well. So in working with EPS, we were able to adjust the scope to get it down to the $90,000 budget that we have for the studies in this year's budget. And so BAC reviewed the revised scope and proposal that's provided in your packet, and they recommended approval of it. The timing that is proposed is that they would provide these studies in the first quarter of 2024. So it's going to take a good 6 to 7 months to get through that process and finish the studies. So we've prepared the resolution to authorize the professional services agreement with EPS. We note in the memo that EPS has worked with the town in the past. They prepared the 2015 Housing Conditions Update report for the town. They also worked with the Housing Coalition on the 2019 Greater Roaring Fork Regional Housing Study that was done. And it provided good data and good recommendations. Some of that is kind of outdated, though, because we had the pandemic and some of the kind of demographics changed over that time. So there's definitely a need for a new study. And so staff would recommend approving of the resolution to authorize the professional services agreement with EPS. Happy to answer questions, yeah.
Yeah, any questions for James
I have
about the
two questions.
proposal?
Sure.
One is the 90,000 coming out of the pot of 5 million that was designated from the bond funding?
I don't think so.
No,
I think that
no,
was
it's
just
not.
general fund.
It's
Yeah.
coming from professional services in the
Okay.
planning departments.
And then my other question is just a clarification. The STR impact fee, how is that different than we just instituted a fee of, I want to say like $300 that was related to, that went into place at the same time as the new STR software was implemented?
So
Yeah,
that,
go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, that fee that we implemented last year was a license fee.
Okay.
And then if we do an impact fee, then that's, basically, an addition, onto that
And generally,
have.
these mitigation fees that are being adopted, in many different municipalities and jurisdictions for short-term rental, they kind of relate to being able to get funding to create new affordable housing to offset, some of the housing that's lost to short-term rental that has typically been longer-term, attainable housing. So that's kind of the concept behind the short-term rental impact fees.
The EPS is going to be just looking at the feasibility and the practicality of implementing the impact fee, and
Yeah.
that'll come back to us at some future time.
Yes, and then that would be for council's consideration, whether you want to do a fee or not.
So James, I was very pleased to see that the EPS included in their work scope that they were going to look at the displacement phenomenon that comes with short-term rental, take a look at how many of our kind of local long-term worker bees in the valley are being displaced by STRs during the summer months. It seems like an ambitious undertaking, incredibly important one, but, you know, I was impressed to see it in there, and I really kind of look forward to it, and I would really underscore the importance of that piece of their work program.
Yeah, and they've done a lot of work in the valley, so they have a lot of the data and the understanding of
Yeah.
kind of how it all fits together, so.
It's going to be really useful, I think, that piece of it for sure.
Yeah, I think the scope is really thorough and hits on all the things that we've been talking about here for the last few months, maybe longer. So it's nice to see it kind of all in here and it'd be coming out in the deliverable. What might a roadmap look like out of this? Would you hazard to say?
Sure. So, you know, as I noted, it's going to take them some time. It will be, you know, basically the first quarter of next year before we get the studies and all the reporting back. And they will come and present kind of their findings and conclusions and recommendations. And then, so after, in the first quarter of next year, when they come back and present their findings and recommendations, then staff would start to work on potential code amendments and housing policy amendments to the housing guidelines for consideration by BOC, P&Z, and council ultimately. You know, there's some topics in there related to whether we need additional categories in our affordable housing, which kind of came out of some of the applications that we had last year. There's information that will come out of these studies related to, you know, where we should be targeting our affordable housing product towards, what types of units, what categories, what AMI levels. And so we'll have to ultimately look at adjustments to our code and guidelines.
Okay.
And then on the short-term rental impact fee, you know, after we get the nexus and the study information back on that, we'd be looking at code amendments to consider whether we want to do a impact fee or not.
Then we can start talking again about specifics after that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition work study will be out early fall,
Okay,
we're hoping.
cool.
We're expecting a draft study document, and then by the end of July for review, and then some
good
reviews and ratification. So yeah, so early fall for that, which will be nice because then EPS can build on that.
And James, when they are doing these considerations, they're looking into, you know, what's scheduled to be built in, you know, the next 10 years, or?
Yeah, they'll take that into consideration. They'll take into consideration the approved unbuilt, the overall demand in the valley, which is huge, of course. They'll take into consideration information that they get from surveying existing affordable housing tenants to kind of see what their desires are moving forward into the future, to kind of better hit, you know, where the demand's going to be with our housing product that gets provided as well.
All right, so if there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve Resolution 27, Series of 23.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 27, series of 2023.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. I think we can do a roll call on this one.
Absolutely. Let's be,
Oh, Angela, that's right, Angela. I forgot, sorry.
That's what a roll call.
So we'll do a roll call.
thank you. Let's begin with Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next item is first reading of ordinance number 17, series of 23, ordinance of the town of Basalt, Colorado, approving amendments to the municipal code section 8-4, schedule 2, vehicles and traffic, special hazards. James.
Yeah, thank you. This item, as the mayor indicated, is first reading of an ordinance that would amend Section 8-4 of the Town Code, and it would prohibit parking in the East Cody Lane cul-de-sac. A bit of background on this topic. This section of the code was amended last year, and it was updated. And as part of those amendments, it was changed to only allow for parking on the south side of the street for East Cody Lane. And that was to let fire trucks have enough width to be able to get through in an emergency situation. So they didn't want parking on both sides of East Cody Lane. Since those amendments were approved, the fire district has now come back and requested further amendments to this section to not permit any on-street parking in the cul-de-sac itself, because they need the ability to be able to turn their aerial around in that cul-de-sac. And when there's parking in that cul-de-sac, it makes it very difficult. They've had the aerial out there trying to turn around in the cul-de-sac, and they've struggled a bit to do that. So they have asked staff to amend the code to get rid of the ability to park in the cul-de-sac. It still allows for parking on one side of the road as you go down the road. So there is the ordinance for consideration that's in your packet. Staff would recommend approval on first reading, and that we set public hearing and second reading date for July 25th. And happy to answer questions.
Questions, comments?
Is Beery and Rugg still there, or are they wholesale at Willits now?
They're still there as well. They're still in the building that's located right here.
Experience?
Yeah. Just wondering if,
And they actually have some head-in parking spaces for their project that are off the street, which are fine, and they've got a bit of a parking lot that goes adjacent to the...
So they don't need that for customer parking?
No.
Okay, great.
James, did we reach out to High Tone during this? I'm sure they probably.
We haven't talked to High Tone about that. We can reach out and talk to
Excellent.
them. They do have a off-street parking facility, but it is a crunch over there,
They're
for sure.
probably the users.
Yeah.
They have to turn out a lot of cars there, so we should at least give them a heads up so they can come talk to us during the public hearing. And if there's no more questions, Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 17, series of 2023 on first reading and set public hearing and second reading for July 25th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pam, we'll call the roll. Hang on,
Absolutely.
Angela.
Let's begin with Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
yes.
Ryan Slack, Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Angela Anderson. Yes. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, that's it, that's all. That's a fast meeting, guys. Appreciate everybody coming. Meeting is hereby adjourned.
Just gonna throw it out there, if anybody's interested. I had invited this guy and David to get a beer from across the street